Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 2020 Evolving Solutions Technology Update and Webinar Series. I'm Jaime Gmach, the President and CEO of Evolving Solutions and Keyva. Provide more information on both companies in a bit. But before I do that, I want to discuss the new format for our technology update this year. This is the 19th year which we will have held the event, and like many other companies, what has always been a face-to-face event has now turned into a virtual event and caused us to transition to a new way of most effectively delivering our message to our clients and our partners. We certainly hope to be back seeing you in person for our 2021 event. Until then, we're very excited and honored to have you here with us today and believe that our new virtual format is going to allow us to provide as much valuable and relevant information as you would have been able to see if you were attending our traditional event format. The silver lining of a virtual delivery of presentations is that we're able to more easily schedule some of the best presenters in the industry from across North America. The only way, I would say, that we would have been able to secure the individuals presenting over the next 3 weeks and have them all travel to Minneapolis from their respective East and West Coast locations would have been scheduling them about a year ago right now. So we're very fortunate to have 3 knowledgeable, well sought after presenters available to deliver their message as part of our webinar series throughout the month of July. Next week, we have Scott Wiest. Scott is the Chief Technology Officer for North America for HPE. The week following that, we have Ed Walsh. Ed is the IBM General Manager for Storage and Software-Defined Infrastructure. The final speaker on July 29th, these are consecutive weeks, is Matt Eastwood. Matt is the Senior Vice President, Enterprise Infrastructure, Cloud, Developers and Alliances at IDC. All 3 of those individuals are exceptional speakers and have a ton of information to share with you. Next slide, please. Following my opening comments at 12:30 or approximately 12:30, I will turn it over to 4 Evolving Solutions and Keyva personnel to go through and hold a very informative informational panel discussion that will be led by Susan Woods. Susan is the Director of Sales for Evolving Solutions. Nate Austin. Nate is the Director of Enterprise Monitoring and Analytics. And Michael Downs, who is the Chief Technology Officer for Evolving Solutions. And finally, Anuj Tuli. Anuj is the Chief Technology Officer for Keyva. I've seen the content that they're presenting, and I believe there's going to be some great information that they have to share with everyone on the call. You can go to the next slide, Michael. The background, a little bit of background on Evolving Solutions and Keyva, and I'll be covering some of this throughout the course of the next 3 or 4 slides. We are quickly approaching the 25th anniversary at Evolving Solutions. It's hard to believe. And we have transitioned our business in so many ways over the years to augment our core infrastructure expertise that the company was built upon. While we continue to provide infrastructure products and services from many of the industry's leading technology manufacturers, we now do so in conjunction with a myriad of other complementary product and service offerings, which allow us to deliver more end-to-end business value to our clients. And again, I'll provide more detail on what those offerings are in the coming slides. Keyva was one of those complementary investments which we made along the way. We launched Keyva about 1.5 years ago as a separate company, but a wholly owned business affiliate of Evolving Solutions. Ironically, the genesis of Keyva, the original thought, came out of another crisis. The need for automation, cloud migration, enablement of agile workforce first became critical within the time frame of the 2009 financial crisis. And those are all basic skills of Keyva today. In addition to those skills, Keyva also focuses on IP creation, API integration, and DevOps consulting. Interestingly, the core Keyva team members were working heavily in the automation space in the 2009 timeframe already at that point in time. And I would just say now more than ever, both companies come together to deliver on our collective goal of supporting our clients on their journey to becoming true hybrid cloud-enabled businesses. Now I want to provide an update on what I see happening in the technology marketplace. And some of these are my ideas. Some are from others that I'll share who I have spoken with directly. And I don't think this statement is pushing the edge of the envelope, but our country and the world are not at the end of the economic downturn. I am hopeful that we can have a strong recovery as we move into 2021, but the fundamental economic indicators for business tells us that we're going to be working our way out of this trough for a little while. And in order to work our way out of and truly begin the recovery, businesses will need to make some fundamental changes. And although I am certainly biased, without a doubt about this, I adamantly believe that many of those business changes need to start with renewed investment in technology. To that end, I've had the opportunity recently, over the last, say, 30 days, maybe 45 days, to speak with key stakeholders in different sectors of technology and business to really understand their perspective as we enter the second half of the year. The bullets on this slide are a result of many conversations and general information that I've obtained from 3 or 4 different areas of business. Some has been feedback directly from clients. Some has been direct feedback from manufacturers and strategic partners of Evolving Solutions and Keyva. Some as a result of some one-on-one discussions I've had with analysts. And finally, some of it is my direct perspective as CEO of Evolving Solutions and Keyva and a business owner. You know, one probably a little more bold statement that I'll make is that after absorbing the information from all of the conversations that I had, I would say this: never has there been a time where the role of CIO and other digital leaders will be so pivotal in shaping the future of their organization as over the next 12 months. As the pandemic appears to have shut down much of our physical world, everyone just automatically assumes that the digital world will step in to fill that chasm. And the only way that assumption comes to fruition is if the CIO is a strong leader and has the support of senior business and financial executives. So the first bullet on here, moving from cash preservation to cash prioritization. I think everyone probably is aware, because you're all associated with businesses in one manner or another, but just about every business, ours included, went into cash preservation mode when it became clear that this was indeed a crisis or 2 crises, if you will, both a health crisis and an economic crisis. Even companies who do not need the cash were accessing their credit lines as precautionary measures. In some cases, it was due to the uncertainty of what lied ahead and still may lie ahead. And in other cases, it was to be prepared to take advantage of potential market opportunity, which may present itself in the form of a possible acquisition or other business opportunity. I would say that as we enter the recovery stage of the pandemic, we see businesses, and again, ours included, but not all of them, looking at ways to prescriptively put their cash back to work. It may be to start or restart dormant projects or to invest in new business initiatives. One way or another, people are looking to come off the sideline and invest some of that cash in their business. The next bullet, strengthening and stabilizing infrastructure. This is a little bit of my perspective, but it refers to the stabilization and strengthening of, I'll say, the quick implementation of technology solutions which were put in place during the initial response to the pandemic, and which may not now stand up to the rigorous testing that needs to be done. Early feedback was that most companies felt their IT departments had done an admirable job given the circumstances under which they were asked to perform. Businesses are now seeing the current situation. For example, the obvious ones are work from home policies and video conferencing not going away anytime soon, and see the necessity of long-term investment of time and funding in these areas. Increased investments in efficiency and automation. The opportunity for leveraging automation in every business is significant, but it can be a challenge as many financial leaders look at automation projects as self-funding initiatives. It's important for IT leaders to be prepared to scale rapid response innovations and previous automation pilots to get quick success and demonstrate more immediate business value, which can then create momentum to do more of the same. Absolutely critical. I think that every company that is going to begin to create more of a space or a gap between them and their competitors is going to do so with some element of automation innovation. Next bullet, building a trusted technology ecosystem. I'm a little bit biased about this one as well. And this came directly from my conversations early on in the pandemic, or maybe a month in with clients. Businesses saw some of their technology ecosystem partners rise to the challenge, adjust the services that they're providing to complement what the clients needed to do in emergency situations, provide timely innovations, and really invest in growing the relationships. Others faltered and didn't rise to the occasion, and their lack of responsiveness compounded the severity of the challenge that companies had to deal with. And I said this pretty much verbatim in the 2008, 9, 10 timeframe. But I look at this period as being the natural culling of the partner herd. And my view is that we're in the midst of a bifurcation of the channel ecosystem where the strong, committed, innovative, and well-financed partners will survive, and the weak and underfunded will be absorbed or closed due to lack of financial support. I expect, so just a Jaime Gmach assessment, that there will be 30 to 35% fewer solution providers in the market by the end of 2021. The next bullet, I'm going to combine two here. The reallocation of IT funding for innovation. Talked about that a little bit earlier, but several IT leaders to whom I spoke lamented the fact that there was little or no appetite for business in the form of innovation projects due to wider cost-cutting measures. And everyone agrees that priority needs to be placed on developing approaches for innovation and operating at speed. The statistic, and I've seen this and I double checked to see if it was still the same. The average company spends less than 20% of their IT budget on innovation. And this must go up as organizations need to find ways to innovate in a more agile manner, or they will get left behind and they will be on the other side of the chasm. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk a little bit about evolving solutions and really how we're looking at becoming a stronger partner as we come out of the pandemic and begin to reinvest at a greater pace. We never really stopped, but we look forward to having the opportunity to continue to grow our business. And I'll talk about our business practices here a little bit as well. But every company wants to make decisions that will indeed make them a stronger company when they come out the other side. Anyone committed to doing so needs to really be taking, I believe, and this is all companies, not just small companies, but all companies, needs to be taking proactive steps today, or better yet, as I said earlier, hopefully never stop making some form of investments throughout the crisis. Prescriptive business investments, we recognize that there is a need to step on the gas pedal and make investments in our business. At times like this, the decision can seem to be counterintuitive, yet we know it's necessary. One of the things we do is we ask our team members to bring forth their ideas on current and future company investments. Did we do the right thing in the past? What can we do in the future? We, in addition to asking them to come forward with investments, ideas, we also ask them to do one thing in conjunction with that, and that's bring forward an idea to describe how that makes us a stronger organization and how it helps us achieve our company goals. We have well-defined mid, short, and long-term company goals for which everyone has a vested interest in the outcome. The longer-term goals we refer to as BHAGs, or big, hairy, audacious goals, if you're not familiar with that term, which require immense planning, effort, and execution to attain, but which help make the company even stronger and more resilient against a future crisis. So those are very, very important. This next topic I could talk about for hours, but culture and core values to Evolving Solutions are paramount to us as an organization and paramount to our success. If we come out of this crisis as a stronger company, a lost ground in our culture and value alignment, we have not been successful. And I bring this up because I see some decisions being made for the sake of revenue and profit at the companies who have historically had a very rich business culture. And we place an immense amount of importance on company culture, collaboration, and core values. Our consistent alignment with our core values of do the right thing, be a team player, and be humbly confident is at the top of the mind of every Evolving Solutions and Keyva team member, and we talk about them every single day. This next topic, helping clients bridge the gaps in their business. Like everyone on the call, we are all learning what we can do to become a more efficient business and not take a step back because of the current circumstances. One of the things that we're trying to do, again, proactively, is identify the areas where we expect that our clients or potential clients may be experiencing some challenges similar to what we are, and we want to share them out with what we have done to overcome the challenges. I mean, there are many areas where this applies. Some we know about today, others probably have not likely bubbled to the surface. But just an example to give you a frame of reference, we experience a void in certain aspects of our technical training and education exposure, which is a critical area for us as a business partner and for many of our clients as well. We know that. In many cases, the training was previously provided as part of a vendor technical conference. The cancellation of conferences past and frankly, likely for the foreseeable future will limit that on-site opportunity. as a top tier partner for many manufacturers, and in some cases, having certified instructors as part of our teams, we can help clients gain access to the education they require or leverage our certified personnel to provide knowledge transfer in lieu of formal training. Again, I think that is just one example of many, many areas that we are trying to brainstorm and come up with ways that we can help others. And frankly, we even have partner peer groups where we help other partners as well with ideas like this, just so nobody is out there reinventing the wheel, especially clients who oftentimes, we don't think about this, but oftentimes experience the same challenges that we do. New technology and engagement methods. One change that will likely go back to the way it was anytime soon, much to my chagrin, as the employees of Evolving Solutions and Keyva know, is the traditional on-premise face-to-face partner-client meeting. And over the years, I mean, we've heard from clients on many occasions that some of the most valuable meetings that they have had have taken place in our client briefing center or at their facility in a highly collaborative setting with multiple team members from both teams engaged in a deep whiteboarding session. I don't want to make that sound too dramatic, but I think it is impactful. And this is one of those areas, which I alluded to earlier, that I might be slightly out of touch with the new reality, but it is hard to convince me that we can replace that experience with a virtual whiteboarding session, regardless of how good the technology is. Even so, we need to identify the preferred method of interaction for each client and adapt to that individual style and preference. It's going to be easier said than done, but finding the balance which provides meaningful engagement. Again, we're not, we either have to improve the way we're doing things right now or become more efficient at it. But sharing out the most effective tools, is very important, I believe, in our bi-directional working relationship with our clients and partners as we move forward. And this is really an area of mutual benefit where we need to both learn and share our experience. Now, just quickly on the business practices, about 3 years ago, we took a step back and said, what are the areas that we need to make investments in to become, one of the most well-rounded, self-sufficient business partners, which we can by adding relevant capabilities to our business, while also recognizing that there's also a time and place for leveraging ecosystem partners. So we launched Keyva, I talked about a little bit earlier, in the fourth quarter of 2018. We just recently launched our enterprise monitoring and analytics practice in the first quarter of 2020, and you'll hear a little bit from Nate Austin. As I mentioned, Nate is the director of that practice. And two additional areas that we are in the midst of running them through our innovation funnel, or at the tail end of that at this point. Next generation networking, which is really, think software-defined networking and everything beyond that. Networking of today versus networking of yesterday. And we're looking at either building out or acquiring a practice may allow us to augment our existing networking capabilities as early as the fourth quarter of 2020. And then cybersecurity, same thing. Today we leverage ecosystem partnerships for that. And we need to bring that in-house, and that may very well be an acquisition, or at least an acquisition of a certain set of talented resources to allow us to hit the ground running. Next slide, please. So I've got 2 slides left, and the last 2 slides will likely look familiar to those of you who have previously been part of Evolving Solutions and Keyva presentations. The first is what I'm showing right now, what we normally refer to as our 3-pillar strategy slide, and the second is our hybrid cloud vision slide. And I'm not going to go into deep detail on them because it would take hours to do that. We use them with most every client because they serve such an important purpose in describing our business strategy and ongoing investments. And most importantly, they both help us in identifying the points of intersection with our clients where we can most effectively support them in achieving their technology-driven business goals. This slide, and I look at it and I get excited about it. There are three really primary elements to it. The three investments on top, core, transitional, and emerging. But the three primary elements, it provides visibility into our investments for our clients, our strategic partners, and our employees. Each of those audiences have a vested interest in knowing how, why, when, and where we are making investments, and each of them has a vested interest in the outcome of those investments. The second key element is it shows the maturity timeline of investments we are making and where they're being made, and also those which are being considered for investment on the far right side. And the third element, and there are a bunch more in this, but the third component is that it allows us to discuss elements of the business that we normally don't take the time to discuss. For instance, the growth in services, that blue line on the bottom, the services transformation, as you move from left to right, services grow as we move from our core into that emerging space. They're just much less product intensive and much more service intensive. Having a discussion around services, for instance, in our application performance management or enterprise monitoring and analytics, having a discussion around that as an example will lead to a discussion around what type of FTE commitment will be required for a client looking to invest in monitoring technology. Now, that's a very specific example, but those are the type things that come out of slides, or out of this slide and the next slide, where depending upon where you're going with the discussion, there are many, many different elements of value to all three of the constituencies that I referenced. And this slide, it was really created because our business has always been about adapting to the needs of our clients and aligning our investments with those needs, while also helping introduce new technologies into the Evolving Solutions and Keyva businesses. So that's why we're always asking many of our clients, what are you looking at? What technologies, what investments? So in addition to helping you with solutions, we're also interested in understanding where your head is and what your forward-looking ideas are. Next slide, please. This is the other slide that I referred to, and in my opinion, this slide is the best representation of the combined capabilities of Evolving Solutions as Keyva, as well as those of our extended partner ecosystem. While it's not intended to represent that we have deep skills in every technology category or solution represented, our significant emphasis on hybrid cloud over the last several years has resulted in the organic year-over-year growth in our capabilities across many of these disciplines. If the previous slide was telling a story about Evolving Solutions, I look at this slide as ultimately telling a story about the client with whom we are engaged in a discussion. You could take the position that this slide is just a completely different view of many of the same technologies from the last slide. But without fail, as we engage in a discussion around this slide, we inevitably get into specific dialogue about a specific or unique element of technology, which ultimately reveals where the client is positioned on their hybrid cloud journey, or where many of you may potentially be stuck on that journey. My very basic messaging around this slide is that each of the layers represents a foundational building block for a hybrid cloud environment. First, you have modern platforms, then you layer on modern operations, and finally, modern development. I'm not going to go through all of the icons. Modern development's an area where some, but certainly not all of our clients have made investments. And finally, you know, one of the unique elements that came out of a discussion that I had with a client with this slide. If you look at the right and left orange and blue areas, those are the characteristics or the elements that cover all three layers. And you know, if I look at, for instance, agile work process, the characteristic that comes to the surface when discussing is that deploying some of the technologies or processes is not just about adopting the technology, it's really about changing the way you work to leverage the technologies. And I will tell you, until I heard that, I had a mental barrier. And you know, you think of agile or DevOps or deploying an APM solution, they require fundamental changes in the way companies work. And in many cases, it can be a process, a business process, or in the case of DevOps, it could be a cultural change as well. So this slide is the perfect segue to the panel discussion. As all of the panelists have a key role within Evolving Solutions or Keyva with regard to our successful messaging and delivery of our hybrid cloud vision to our clients. In closing, I would just say this, we're taking every opportunity to work with technology leadership within our client base to help them get out in front of what I term a rapidly shifting landscape and help them lead change within their business versus waiting for the business to tell them what they need. Now, please allow me to introduce Susan Woods. Susan, as I mentioned, is the Director of Sales for Evolving Solutions. Susanna will lead the panel discussion, and I will be back afterward for a few minutes to close things out. Turn it over to you, Susan.
Thank you, Jamie, and thanks for that great discussion. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Susan Woods, the Director of Sales as Evolving Solutions, as Jamie mentioned. And with me for our panel discussion, and hopefully they're all coming on here as we speak, I have Michael Downs, the CTO of Evolving Solutions, Nate Austin, the Practice Director for the Enterprise Monitoring and Analytics Practice at Evolving Solutions, and last but not least, Anuj Tuli, the CTO at Keyva. As Jamie mentioned, we are observing organizations entering the recovery phase and focusing on stabilizing and strengthening their infrastructure while prioritizing investments in new IT innovation. My first question to our panel: now that organizations have had a chance to absorb and evaluate a response to the initial impact of the pandemic, are you seeing any common themes around the rate of innovation in IT to support this new normal? Michael, let's start with you.
Sure. I believe we absolutely are seeing changes in the way that the rate of change in the way people are adopting innovation. One of the key things that I think we all expected to see, and Jamie alluded to, was an initial pulling back on projects and initiatives as people decided what was important for them, whether or not they had the cash to go ahead and continue with the projects and so on. And that absolutely happened within our client base. What I think is most interesting is that how quickly it changed. We sort of went from that initial drawdown to quickly looking at what kinds of things did our businesses need to do in order to cope with the new situation. And what I found particularly interesting was that a lot of times, with employees being remote, with only being able to have digital interaction with clients and digital interaction with partners, some of the initiatives they'd had on their digital transformation roadmap suddenly came to the top. And instead of being an 18-month politically laden process, were suddenly done in 3 weeks or 4 weeks because there were things that needed to get done in order for the business to be able to continue. The other thing that we've seen a reasonable amount of, actually quite a bit of, is an adoption of both public cloud and hybrid cloud technologies. Clearly, one of the value propositions of cloud from the very beginning and cloud-like experience and behavior is the ability to quickly adapt to a situation that's changing, the ability to roll things quickly out to high-value constituencies and clients, and to make those business processes actually live in an IT environment. And I know, Anuj, you've had quite a few conversations with clients about that cloud transition at all. Did you want to add some comments to that?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I mean, given the times, we've certainly seen change in how clients finance their projects, right? I mean, at least the ones, some clients have had a hold on the CapEx spending for the quarter, while others that have a monthly spend, they're trying to either minimize it or make sure that whatever they're spending is being spent efficiently, right? So we've basically been engaged in projects where we are helping clients optimize their IT spend. So take, for example, to make sure all your infrastructure components are set up with a pricing model, and also integrated with ITBM, IT business management, so that business leaders can then run reports on individual assets or a group of assets and produce these financial metrics in a granular fashion that help them make a decision around which workloads are optimized, which are not, things like that, right? So all in all, I'd say that when we talk about cost efficiencies, I think the on-demand, pay-as-you-go consumption model that public cloud provides, it seems a little more lucrative, at least for the newer workloads. And then for existing on-prem workloads, again, we've seen a demand where teams are asking us to help them make the use of existing resources more efficient.
Thanks, Anuj. Nate, are you seeing clients change their monitoring practices or approaches in support of this new normal?
Well, so what I would say is, in regards to following what Anuj just mentioned, for workloads that are moving, either whether they are moving to more of a hybrid approach or a completely staying on-prem, moving to different hardware, moving to public, at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter, I'll say, where the workloads are located, right? Monitoring still needs to be done, and really, I'll say the SLIs or the KPIs, if you will, that need to be collected really are the same regardless of where those applications or services live. Now, there may be some difference in, I'll say, how they're collected, right, and where the sources of those data are coming from, depending on the platform that is being used. But so I'd say that again, the needs are the same, the outcomes and the requirements are the same. Just a little bit of the inner workings of how are changed.
Great, thank you. And this is all very interesting. What I'd like to do now is shift a little bit and talk about what you guys are seeing clients focused on right now. Anuj, do you want to kick us off, please?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest trend I'd say that we have seen is where clients are asking for a transformation on an organizational level with the adoption of agile processes, right? So this is a transformation of people, process, and tools. It's a change in mindset. It doesn't happen overnight, right? It requires continuous and universal application of new methodologies across the company, across the board, right? In the end, they do help increase the productivity and provide flexibility that comes with Agile. Secondly, and also in relation to Agile, I'd say that it's also the creation of this community model, right? Which is similar to open source. It's a community model for internal teams. And this means that the work that internal teams are doing, the technical work, they are sharing it with not just other internal teams, but possibly external teams, depending on how open that work is. But there's also this cross-silo education and pollination of various skill sets, right? So there's pollination of different skills and initiatives amongst different team members. So this helps with innovation, it helps with ideas, it helps with visibility across these team members, and also helps with encouraging the adoption of what's called a new normal, as we say it, right? And then thirdly, I'd say, and one of the most important things is that clients are now beginning to adopt this delivery paradigm of a product versus a project. And this is an important shift. It's a cultural shift. It's also a change in mindset where every use case or every major outcome is considered a product, right? So rather than teams concentrating on dates and timelines, when we look at it from a project perspective, teams are essentially focusing on the outcome, the end outcome, or a specific use case, or what are the features that are needed to be developed to deliver on that end-to-end use case, right? So take, for example, a client team may choose, instead of developing a new billing application in-house, they may choose to use one of the available open source solutions and then integrate that solution with other possibly open source, possibly enterprise offerings, right, to achieve an end-to-end use case. So this is more like a best of breed model, I'd say, where you're choosing solutions that are built specifically for a functional area and integrating them to create this end-to-end use case. Obviously, this requires teams, this type of work requires teams to learn on the fly because the tech is changing so quickly. And if you're using an open source solution, there is some dependency from the client side on features that get added to the open source offering that are contributed by the open source community. Obviously, and can say, I want to develop a feature that the open source product is missing and push it back to the open source community, but that's up to them, right? So, and to clarify, when I say product versus a product approach versus a project approach, this doesn't mean that these initiatives lack a project management. It's just that it's a different model of development. It's a different process. It actually enables clients to adapt quickly and be more flexible. So specifically in the hybrid scenario. So obviously, as your core product and offering and tools are changing, the day two paradigm will also change. And when I say day two, I mean things like maintenance, patching, monitoring. So how, what sort of changes would need to be made to make sure that you're monitoring these new workloads for specific KPIs? So Nate, I'm sure you see clients in various stages of adoption as well when we talk about this journey. What kinds of things are you seeing in that space, which maybe align or maybe are different than some of the things I described?
Yeah, I mean, just recently we've seen, I'll say primarily, organizations fall into one of two buckets. And of course, there are always some that are not this, but in general, it's, one where the organization, has sells products or services that, over the last several months were either in less demand or less accessible, or they were able to bring in less revenue, and because of that, everything outside of, let's say, a core skeleton crew that's keeping the core business running, has been kind of put on pause, right? So that's, I'll say, one example of organizations we've seen. Now I say pause because it's not that they are disappeared or gone, just that again, until things have gotten better, and as many of us know, that has already started. We've seen some of those organizations start to bring the lights back on, right, for these types of groups that are perhaps dedicated to monitoring or working with monitoring. But then on the flip side, and we've actually seen more of this maybe than I would have expected, which are the organizations that, again, for whatever reason, are either selling more of their products or services, or are selling them even if it's not more, or even if it's less, but in a completely different way than they were before, right? So either it's more sporadic, or it's very spiky, or whether, again, the channels or the models are different that they were doing, and because of that, there's an increased need, right, for insights, business insights into into their key applications and services. So, and again, that's been quite a bit more than I even expected, and so I think that's been good.
Thanks, Nate. So as a follow-up to the focus areas, again, back to Nate and Anuj on this, can you share some best practices that you're seeing from clients that have adapted well during these unpredictable times? And Nate, why don't we just continue the discussion with you?
Yeah, sure. So like these organizations I was just talking about that have this I won't even say renewed focus, but because they, maybe we're never focusing, but this real prioritization of monitoring, of collecting this data. A couple things that we're seeing that they're doing pretty consistently. First and foremost, and some people may be like, these are obvious, but we've seen plenty of organizations that don't do this, which is providing dedicated monitoring resources. Now, depending on the size of the organization, this may be a single individual, it could be a few, it could be many, but really a team that their focus is around monitoring and not anything else. Converse that with many organizations where monitoring is 15, 25, 30% of some infrastructure individuals things that they're doing on a daily basis. And the second thing that I would jump on, which really kind of goes side by side with that, but really is, I'll say, middle and upper management's enablement of that team. So whether the team exists, and again, there is enablement by saying, yes, we realize now just how important this data is that comes from I'll say these monitoring processes, workflows, and this data to run our business, and to understand as we're moving these workloads, as we're changing how we behave, what is the impact of that? By having it from a top-down thing, from both the culture and enablement, that really allows those teams to spend the time and the energy to do the right thing there and get that data out.
Great, thank you. Anuj, how about your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the best practice discussion is pretty timely and usually it's because right now, if you look at the last few months, the use case that I'd say has resonated the most is the automation around capacity management, right? So I think we can all on this call appreciate that, when organizations have 100% of their staff working from home, there's a multiple-fold demand increase for VDIs, virtual desktops, VPN capacity, network, compute, and so on, right? So what we have been doing is we've helped clients set up automation that would provision back-end infrastructure when, say, the monitored capacity of a specific resource or a set of resources dipped below predefined levels, right? So infrastructure provisioning, I'd say in general, was the use case that resonated the most in our customer base, including the ability, in fact, for client teams to request new resources on demand in a click or a self-service fashion. The second scenario I'd say is, again, around open source tools. In fact, I saw this question in the chat, and it's similar, where open source, there are so many multiple open source tools for every single domain, right? So there's been a tremendous need from our customer base for us to help them with education around what these different offerings are, what they can do. The first question is like, which one is the best for me, right? Is it easy to use? What's the underlying platform for that open source tool set, right? What's the support model for enterprise versions? How can our teams use this tool to reduce technical debt, right? So there's several things to know about all these offerings before making a decision around what's the best fit in a particular environment, right? So what we have been doing is doing a lot of lunch and learn sessions to cover those sort of topics. And then as we discussed a bit earlier around effective spending, we've had clients ask us to help them migrate some of their workloads into public cloud. And this includes transforming, apps that are legacy apps or old legacy ERP applications, for example, into cloud native. In some cases, it's a complete replacement, I gotta admit, but in most cases, it's a refactoring of the code. It's making sure that there's no security loopholes when these apps get hosted on public cloud. And again, the benefit gained is that most of the benefits that public cloud offers, which is scalability, you have on-demand capacity. And as you're going through these projects, you can essentially genericize the processes and tools you're using and the consumption of those tools such that you reduce your dependency on specific offerings or specific API calls, for example, because you don't want to get locked into a particular product, right? So use cases like API abstraction come to mind. So the idea is that we are essentially helping these clients gain overall cost efficiencies by leveraging the pay-as-you-go consumption model that's offered by public cloud.
Well, thank you, Anuj, for this. Guys, this has been a really good conversation. With a few minutes that we have left here, Michael, I want to wrap this up with a question to you.
Sure.
Can you comment on how these trends impact or influence our strategy at Evolving Solutions and Keyva?
Sure. So I think Jamie mentioned that, several years ago, we really took a step back and started looking at what we needed to do to make sure we continue to serve the needs of our clients. And we talked to a lot of different clients, and one of the things that repeatedly came up was, on one hand, I've got a legacy environment that I have to support, that I have to maintain, that I have to continue to make operate the way that I want to. On the other hand, I've got to create a new environment that my developers can use to drive business initiatives forward. And that environment is also my responsibility as an operations professional, as an IT professional, because no matter whether the developer went out and swiped their credit card and picked it up someplace in AWS or not, if it's connected back to my infrastructure and it's not delivering the value they expected, it's going to come back to me. No amount of development effort, no amount of money spent on a new project, a new innovative application that transforms your business is useful. It's wasted if it's not up and available and ready to use for the intended audience. So we really pulled those things together into what you'll see as modern operations when you see the hybrid cloud vision, and the creation of Keyva, the founding of Keyva, the creation of the EMA practice, and the other areas where we're focusing in our strategy represent the areas that we believe that our clients need to be able to develop capabilities in order to deliver both places. Automation is as Anuj said a couple times, it's got great ability to reduce the toil inside of your existing environment, as well as it's a necessity to be able to exist in a cloud native environment. Nate talked a couple times about monitoring, regardless of where the platform is. You've got to be able to be successful. You've got to be able to have it to be successful. It's even more relevant now. That legacy and monitoring approach that allows you to reduce your time to resolve an issue and reduce the number of people required is much more relevant as finances become more constrained. But if you don't know what's happening with your cloud native multi-factor application, you have no way of being able to tell whether or not you're getting the value out of it. So those two areas are great examples of sort of where our overall strategy has really allowed us to address the needs that clients are having right now.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Well, it sounds like from this conversation, with everything going on in the world in 2020, the impact on IT organizations are substantial. More than ever, IT organizations are asked to do more with less. It is not just about keeping up anymore, but IT organizations really need to and are adapting to different technology paradigm. The need for agility and automation is increasing. Applications and where they reside are changing, and it is more important than ever to understand the impact of the performance of those applications on the business outcomes. Hence the need to monitor and manage those applications closely, but not only the applications, but the entire IT stack. With that, Michael, Nate, and Anuj, thank you very much for participating and joining me this afternoon. As a reminder to our audience, there will be a pop-up survey at the end of the session. We ask that you please take the time to complete that because it really does help us to improve our focus and our content for future sessions. Jamie, with that, back to you.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you, Nate, Anuj, and Michael. Great information. I've got just a couple things as I close out here. I always say two things. First, when I close out our technology update meetings, I want to thank everyone so very much for taking the time to be part of our event. I know that there are a lot of different things you can be doing even for this hour. And please register for the upcoming webinar series. There are 3 great presenters. The links for registration to the events are on the Evolving Solutions website. And the second thing that I always say is, remember that Evolving Solutions and Keyva have a tremendous amount of talent available at your disposal. And that doesn't have to be chargeable talent. It's not that we come on site and we have to bill for it. We have architects, we have team members. We want to help you get over the hurdles that you may be experiencing or encountering on your journey. So I want to thank everyone very, very much for all of your support for Evolving Solutions and Keyva. I hope everyone had a fantastic holiday weekend. And now, before we go, I would like to turn it over to Lauren to give out a couple raffle prizes. So please stick around for another few minutes here. Lauren, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Jamie. Our prize winners for today are Faith Tang. You have won Apple AirPods. Clark Averill. You have won a Yeti cooler. And Brian Bednars, you have won 2 Yeti koozies. I will contact you after the webinar today and get ready to ship those out to you. Thank you again, everyone, for attending. Please be sure to visit us at evolvingsoul.com and our events page to sign up for the remaining webinars. Thank you.